I never imagined I would see my mother Audrey again after she kicked me out at 18 for her new husband and stepkids. 8 years of radio silence until yesterday, when she suddenly wanted to meet for coffee. The same woman who told me I was not welcome in their new home now sat across from me with a designer purse asking for money to send my step-siblings to college. All because she discovered I had become successful despite her abandonment. The audacity left me speechless. Before I share how this all began, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if family drama stories resonate with you. Trust me, you will want to hear how I handled this situation. Growing up, it was just me and my mom Audrey against the world. My father left before I could form any memories of him leaving Audrey to raise me on her own in our small 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Philadelphia. Despite working 2 jobs as a receptionist during the day and waitressing on weekends, she always made time for me. I remember how she would help me with homework at the diner during her breaks, the other waitresses slipping me free slices of pie while I waited. Money was always tight, but Audrey made sure I never felt poor. She would take me to the library every Saturday morning where we would spend hours reading together. When I turned 10, she saved for months to buy me a secondhand computer, knowing I was fascinated by technology. That old desktop became my gateway to learning coding, though the dial-up internet would disconnect whenever someone called our landline. During middle school, Audrey would talk about how proud she would be to see me graduate college someday. Neither of my parents had made it past high school, and Audrey was determined that I would have opportunities she never had. She promised to help me, however. She could even starting a small college fund where she put away $5 or $10 whenever possible. Our little family was not perfect, but we had each other. Every night before bed, Audrey would tell me, "The world might be tough, but you are tougher. We will figure it out together always." I believed her completely. Everything changed during my junior year of high school. Audrey started working at a new office building downtown as an administrative assistant. She began coming home later, often, with a smile I had not seen before. After a few weeks, she finally told me about Rick, her new boss, who had asked her to dinner. I was 16, then old enough to be happy for her, but young enough to be nervous about sharing her attention. Rick was everything we were not: wealthy, polished, confident. He owned a successful real estate development company and lived in an area of town we had only driven through to admire the houses. On our first dinner together, he picked us up in a luxury car that cost more than our entire apartment. Audrey seemed transformed in his presence, laughing at all his jokes and touching his arm in a way that made me slightly uncomfortable. What I noticed immediately was how Rick spoke about people. Anyone who worked for him was lazy, his ex-wife was crazy, and people in our neighborhood were all on welfare. Audrey never corrected him, even when he made comments about how surprised he was that she was so classy given where she came from. Each time she would just smile and change the subject, something the old Audrey would never have done. Within 3 months, Audrey was wearing new clothes and had changed her hairstyle. She started using phrases Rick used and adopting his opinions on everything from politics to which grocery stores were acceptable to shop at. When I mentioned that she seemed different, she got defensive and said I should be happy she finally found someone who appreciated her. What worried me most was meeting his children, Jordan and Lily, who lived with Rick after his divorce. Jordan was 14, serious and quiet, while 12-year-old Lily seemed to have mastered the eye roll as an art form. Both kids had closets bigger than my bedroom and spoke about their private school and European vacations like they were discussing the weather. The engagement happened faster than I expected, just 6 months after they met. The ring was enormous, and Audrey cried when showing it to me. I tried to be supportive, but something felt off about how quickly everything was moving. That night, Audrey sat on the edge of my bed like she used to when I was little. "I know this is happening fast, but Rick is my chance at a better life for both of us," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "This could mean college for you without loans, a nice place to live, security I never thought I would have. Rick says you can even intern at his company someday." I smiled and congratulated her, swallowing my concerns. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe this really would be good for both of us. The wedding was held at an exclusive country club where Rick was a member. I stood awkwardly in my newly purchased suit, watching my mother marry a man I barely knew. Audrey looked beautiful but almost unrecognizable in her designer gown, surrounded by Rick's friends and business associates. My few relatives who attended seemed as out of place as I felt. At the reception, I sat at a table with distant cousins, while Audrey and Rick circulated among Philadelphia's elite. When I finally got a moment with her, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Is not this amazing? I never dreamed I would have all this." But her eyes kept darting around the room, as if seeking Rick's approval from a distance. After the honeymoon in Bali, we moved into Rick's house temporarily while they looked for a new place. My room was actually a guest room in the basement, while Jordan and Lily had massive bedrooms upstairs with their own bathrooms. At dinner, Rick would dominate the conversation, asking his children about school and activities while rarely acknowledging my presence. When I would speak, he would often cut me off or change the subject. Audrey noticed, but said nothing. When I confronted her privately, she simply said, "We need to adapt, honey. This is a different world with different rules. Just try harder to fit in." Fitting in meant changing everything about myself. My clothes were not right. My manners were not refined enough. My public school education was inadequate. Rick never said these things directly, but his constant subtle corrections made the message clear. Audrey began to echo his sentiments, suggesting I change my appearance and interests to better align with our new family. The first major argument came after a dinner where Rick discussed the plans for their new house. It was being built in the most exclusive neighborhood in the area, with custom everything and rooms designated for specific purposes. When I asked about my room, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "We have been meaning to talk to you about that," Audrey said, looking at Rick for support. "The plans are already finalized, and with college coming up for you, we thought you would be getting your own place soon anyway." Rick jumped in. "College is expensive, and we have Jordan and Lily to think about too. You seem independent enough to handle your own housing situation." I looked at my mother in disbelief. Just months ago, she had been saving pennies for my education, and now she was casually discussing not having a room for me in their new home. That night led to our biggest fight yet. Audrey accused me of being ungrateful for all the opportunities Rick was providing. When I reminded her of all we had been through together, she responded with the words that still haunt me today. "That was then. This is our life now, and you need to either embrace it or make your own way." I recognized the words as Rick's, not hers. My 18th birthday should have been a celebration. Instead, it became the day my mother chose her new family over me. I came home from school to find Audrey and Rick waiting in the kitchen, their expressions serious. "We need to talk about your future," Rick began, his tone businesslike. "We are moving next month, and as an adult now, you need to start taking responsibility for yourself." Audrey nodded beside him, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "We think it is best if you find your own place. With your graduation coming up, it is time for you to be independent." The conversation that followed was surreal. They had already packed most of my belongings into boxes. I had 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. Audrey offered me $1,000 to get started, what she called my independence fund, but what felt more like a payoff to disappear from their perfect new life. When I asked about college and the small fund she had been building for years, Audrey looked uncomfortable. "We have had to reassess our priorities," she said. "Jordan will be starting at preparatory school next year, and Lily needs braces and horse riding lessons. You are smart enough to get scholarships or student loans." I could not believe this was the same woman who had raised me, who had promised we would always face the world together. As the reality of my situation sank in, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. If Rick had not wanted me around, would you still be doing this? Her silence was the only answer I needed. I moved in with my friend Mark, temporarily sleeping on a futon in his family's basement. His parents were kind but clearly uncomfortable with the open-ended arrangement. During those first few weeks, I tried calling Audrey several times, hoping she would change her mind, or at least express some remorse. Eventually, the number was changed. Working at a local electronics store during the day and a restaurant at night, I barely managed to stay in school and graduate. Each paycheck went to basic survival rent, food, bus fare, with nothing left for college. I watched on social media as Audrey posted photos of their new mansion, Jordan's prestigious academy, and Lily's riding competitions. There were no mentions of me as if I had never existed. Depression hit me hard during that first year on my own. Some days getting out of bed seemed impossible. The sense of abandonment cut deeper than any physical pain I had experienced. There were nights I would lie awake wondering what I had done wrong, how I could have been better, how my own mother could discard me so easily. A turning point came during my second semester at community college, which I was attending part-time while working. Professor Williams noticed me falling asleep in class, not from laziness but exhaustion after working double shifts. Instead of reporting me, he asked me to stay after class. "You have real talent with computers," he said after hearing my situation. "But talent without opportunity is wasted. Let me help you apply for some scholarships." Professor Williams became the mentor I desperately needed. With his guidance, I secured a scholarship that covered my tuition and books. He also helped me find a better-paying job at a local tech company where I could use my developing skills. For the first time since being kicked out, I felt a glimmer of hope. Moving into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates gave me stability I had not had in months. The place was cramped and in a questionable neighborhood, but it was a step up from couch surfing. My roommates, Sam and Tyler, became the beginning of my chosen family, people who accepted me as I was without conditions. During those years, holidays were the hardest. Thanksgiving at a diner, Christmas with friends, families, birthdays marked only by colleagues who barely knew me. Audrey sent no cards, made no calls, showed no interest in my graduation from community college or my acceptance to complete my degree at State University through a transfer program. I learned to stop expecting anything from her. Each disappointment had hardened something inside me, building resilience I never knew I would need. 4 years after being kicked out, I completed my computer science degree while working full-time. Unlike many of my classmates who took time off after graduation, I could not afford even a day of celebration. The loans I had taken to supplement my scholarships weighed heavily, and there was no family safety net if I failed. A former internship supervisor recommended me for a position at a promising tech startup developing software solutions for healthcare systems. The pay was modest, but the potential for growth was enormous. I threw myself into the work, staying late and volunteering for the projects no one else wanted. My personal life suffered, but career advancement became my focus, my way of proving my worth to myself since my family had made their assessment clear. The breakthrough came in my 3rd year at the company. I identified a critical flaw in our main product and developed an innovative solution that saved millions in potential liability. The CEO noticed, promoting me to lead a new development team focused on security enhancements. My salary doubled, then tripled, as the company expanded. When a major tech corporation acquired our startup, every employee with equity received a substantial payout. At 30 years old, I suddenly had financial security I had never imagined. After years of surviving paycheck to paycheck, I could afford to buy a comfortable condo in a good neighborhood and invest the remainder for the future. As my professional life flourished, thoughts of Audrey occasionally surfaced. On quiet evenings, I would wonder about her life, whether she ever regretted her choices, if she ever told her friends what happened to her first child. Social media showed glimpses of their continuing prosperity. Rick's business expanded. Jordan graduated from his prestigious academy, Lily, competed in equestrian events nationwide. Their world seemed untouched by economic realities that affected ordinary people. The contact, when it finally came, was as unexpected as it was unwelcome. A Facebook message appeared in my rarely checked inbox from an account I immediately recognized. Audrey's profile picture showed her smiling beside Rick, looking older but still maintaining the polished appearance she had adopted when entering his world. The message was casual, as if we had spoken last week rather than 8 years ago. "Hi, sweetie. I happened to see an article about your company in the business section. Looks like you are doing so well. Would love to catch up sometime. Maybe coffee." No acknowledgement of the years of silence. No mention of how she had discarded me when I no longer fit her new life narrative. Just a breezy invitation, as if we were distant acquaintances rather than mother and son. I stared at the message for days, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to give her the same silence she had given me. Another part, a younger and more vulnerable piece of myself, still craved her approval, her acknowledgement, her love. After consulting with my therapist, a crucial support I had finally allowed myself, I decided to respond. Not for Audrey, but for my own closure. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown neutral territory away from either of our homes. The week leading up to our meeting was an emotional roller coaster. I rehearsed what I would say, then decided to say nothing at all. I considered canceling multiple times. Friends offered to come along for support, but this was a conversation I needed to have alone. When the day arrived, I arrived early, choosing a table with a clear view of the entrance. Audrey walked in 15 minutes late, dressed in expensive casual wear that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She had aged with new lines around her eyes that her careful makeup could not quite conceal. For a moment, I saw a flash of the mother I remembered before she spotted me, and her face transformed into the polished mask she had perfected as Rick's wife. The first 20 minutes were excruciating. Audrey chatted about the weather, her tennis club, and her charitable committee work. She asked superficial questions about my job, nodding, without really listening to my responses. Her eyes kept darting to her phone, checking the time or messages I could not tell which. Finally, after exhausting her small-talk repertoire, she placed her manicured hands flat on the table and leaned forward slightly. "I have actually been meaning to talk to you about something important," she said, her voice taking on the tone she used to use when discussing serious matters. "You see, Jordan and Lily are both at college age now, and with everything going on." She paused dramatically, clearly expecting me to ask what was happening. When I remained silent, she continued with a small sigh. "Rick has had some business setbacks. The economy, you know. We have had to make some adjustments to our lifestyle, and the kids' college funds have been affected. Since you are doing so well now, I thought perhaps you might want to help your siblings with their education." Family helping family. The audacity of her request hit me like a physical blow. For years, she had not considered me family enough to include in holidays, birthdays, or even have a bedroom in their home. Now that I had something she wanted, I was suddenly family again. "What about my college fund?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "The one you saved for years before meeting Rick. What happened to that?" Audrey had the decency to look uncomfortable, if only briefly. "That money went toward the down payment on our house. Rick advised that real estate was a better investment than keeping it in a savings account. Besides, you clearly did fine without it. So I was not family when you needed to choose between me and your new life." I said, the words finally flowing after years of silence. "But now I am family when you need money." Her face flushed. "That is not fair. We gave you independence, which clearly benefited you in the long run. Look how successful you have become on your own. If we had coddled you, you might never have developed such self-reliance." "Self-reliance," I repeated, my voice rising, despite my best efforts to stay calm. "I was homeless at 18. I worked 2 jobs while going to school. I went hungry some nights because I could not afford both rent and food. That is not independence, Audrey. That is abandonment." People at nearby tables began to glance our way, but I no longer cared. "For 8 years you never called, never checked if I was alive or dead. No birthday cards, no Christmas invitations, nothing. And now you want me to give money to the kids you chose over me." Tears welled in Audrey's eyes, but I recognized them as the same tears she used to manipulate Rick years ago. They were not tears of regret, but of frustration that things were not going her way. "I never chose anyone over you," she insisted. "You were always so stubborn, refusing to adapt to our new situation. Rick tried to include you, but you rejected all his efforts." That was so far from the truth that I almost laughed. Instead, I stood up, placing money on the table for my untouched coffee. "The answer is no, Audrey. I will not be giving money to support the family that had no place for me. I suggest you look into student loans. They build character after all." As I walked away, she called after me, playing her final card. "I am still your mother." I paused at the door without turning around. "No. You gave up that right 8 years ago." The drive home from the coffee shop was a blur. My hands shook on the steering wheel as years of suppressed emotions surged through me. By the time I reached my condo, I was exhausted, collapsing onto my couch as the reality of the encounter sank in. My friend David came over that evening bringing takeout and a sympathetic ear. As I recounted the meeting, he listened without judgment, letting me process the complicated feelings Audrey's reappearance had triggered. "You know you do not owe her anything," David said finally. "Not money, not forgiveness, not even another conversation if you do not want it." The simplicity of his statement hit home. For years, I had carried the weight of our relationship, wondering what I could have done differently, how I might have been worthy of keeping in her new life. But the responsibility had never been mine to bear. That night, I made a list of all the people who had supported me when Audrey had not. Professor Williams, who saw my potential, Mark's family, who gave me temporary shelter, Sam and Tyler, who shared their tiny apartment, David, who had become the brother I never had. These were people who had chosen to be in my life, who had shown up when it mattered. Still, questions about Jordan and Lily lingered. They had been children when all this happened, not responsible for their parents' decisions. Out of curiosity more than obligation, I looked them up online. Jordan, now 22, had graduated from his elite prep school, but chosen a state university instead of the Ivy League path Rick had undoubtedly planned. His social media showed involvement in community service and environmental activism, a stark contrast to his father's values. Lily, at 20, seemed to have embraced the privileged lifestyle more fully, with posts featuring luxury vacations and expensive purchases. On impulse, I sent Jordan a message suggesting we meet for lunch without telling Audrey or Rick. To my surprise, he agreed immediately. We met at a casual restaurant near his university the following weekend. The awkward teen I remembered had grown into a thoughtful young man with a quiet confidence that reminded me more of myself than Rick. "I have wanted to reach out for years," Jordan confessed after we ordered. "Dad and Audrey told us you chose to leave, that you wanted independence and rejected the family. But that never made sense to me. Who chooses to be alone at 18? Hearing how my story had been rewritten stung, but it was not surprising. We spent hours sharing our different perspectives on the same family. Jordan described the increasing financial pressure as Rick's business faced challenges, the arguments behind closed doors, the expectations placed on him and Lily to maintain appearances at all costs. "They never told us they asked you for money," he said, clearly embarrassed. "I am working part-time and have scholarships. I do not need their help or yours." Lily was a different story. According to Jordan, she had fully absorbed Rick's materialistic values and Audrey's social climbing ambitions. She expected the lifestyle they had promised without understanding the financial reality. As we parted ways, Jordan hesitated before asking, "Will you stay in touch?" I always wondered what having an older brother would be like. His words stayed with me for days, prompting a decision that felt both right and healing. I contacted my alma mater and established an anonymous scholarship fund for students who had experienced family estrangement. The irony was not lost on me, using my success to help others in the situation Audrey had put me in. For Jordan specifically, I created a separate merit-based fund that would supplement his existing scholarships, allowing him to focus on his studies instead of working excessive hours. The account was set up to appear as a university grant rather than family assistance, preserving his independence and pride. Then I wrote Audrey a letter, not an email or text, but an actual letter that required thought and could not be instantly responded to. I explained that I would not be giving money directly to her or Rick for the kids' education. I detailed my actual journey after being kicked out, not to make her feel guilty, but to correct the narrative she had created. I set clear boundaries for any potential relationship moving forward, acknowledgement of the past harm, genuine remorse, and respect for my autonomy. The final paragraph was the hardest to write, but the most important. "I have built a good life without your support. I have found family and friends who chose me when you did not. I no longer need your approval or love to feel worthy. If you want to be part of my life again, it will be on terms that honor who I am now, not who you wish I had been then." Audrey's response did not come for almost a month. When it did, it was unlike any communication we had shared in over a decade. She wrote of her regrets, her failure as a mother, how she had allowed Rick's influence to override her own maternal instincts. She acknowledged choosing security and status over her relationship with me, admitting there was no justification for abandoning her child. Whether her remorse was genuine or financially motivated remained unclear. People rarely change completely, and years of behavior do not reverse overnight. But her willingness to acknowledge the truth rather than maintain the convenient fiction was a start. We began a cautious reconnection, monthly phone calls, occasional emails. I maintained clear boundaries, correcting her when she attempted to rewrite history or dismiss the impact of her choices. Our relationship would never be what it once was. The unconditional trust between mother and child was irreparably broken, but perhaps something new could grow in its place, something based on honesty and mutual respect rather than obligation. Through this journey, I learned that forgiveness is not about excusing actions or pretending harm never occurred. It is about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment, making peace with the past without allowing it to determine your future. I forgave Audrey not for her sake, but for my own. The greatest victory was not financial success or even reconnecting with my mother. It was breaking the cycle, learning that family is defined by love and support, not blood or obligation. It was building a life rich in genuine connections rather than material wealth. It was becoming someone who could face abandonment and still choose compassion, who could experience betrayal without becoming bitter. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who only reached out when they needed something? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family stories. Remember that sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we are born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it helps anyone going through similar struggles and know they are not alone, and that success truly is the best revenge.